Meanwhile, an extraordinary meeting took place on Saturday, a joint meeting of the Arab League and the OIC. The OIC is the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation. And this meeting was held in Riyadh. 57 Islamic nations participated. On the agenda was the Israel-Hamas war. The Islamic nations had gathered to find a way forward, a way to help the Palestinians of Gaza. But it's hard to get so many countries to agree on something, especially on a complex issue like the future of Gaza. Iran wanted to arm Palestinians. The rest did not agree. Iran wanted to put an oil embargo on Israel. Others did not agree. So the divisions came to the fore. But on some points, there was consensus. Every Islamic nation demanded an end to hostilities. Every one of them condemned Israel. And every OIC member wants to send aid to Gaza.
The kingdom affirms its categorical rejection of the continuing aggression, occupation and forced displacement of the people of Gaza, and stresses that Israel bears responsibility for the crimes committed against Palestinian people and resources.
Our goal is the delivery of humanitarian aid without pause. What is needed is a permanent ceasefire, not a temporary one.
The first step is a ceasefire and a halt to the killing of civilians in Gaza and ending the indiscriminate attacks on civilians.
Well, that was the easy part. No real scope for different opinions there. Another thing everyone agreed on was how useless the United Nations was. They called on the UN Security Council to put forth a ceasefire resolution. Although this message was really just for one country, and that is the United States of America, because Washington has been rejecting calls for a ceasefire. It has been backing Israel. So the final OIC resolution was a not-so-subtle message to Joe Biden.
United Nations Security Council has clearly shown that it is unable to live up to the expectations of the international community and that reform is absolutely necessary. But I believe that with the collective will of the Arab world and the Muslim world, and as His Excellency the Secretary General pointed out, the number of countries and the size of these countries, we have the weight to be able to push in that direction. And I am sure that we will do all that we can, and that with the instructions that we have received from the leadership of these countries now, that we will be taking a very, very strong message.
The Gulf states are watching Biden's moves, and there will be consequences. That is the message. But what those consequences will be is still up for debate. And that was a major disagreement during Saturday's OIC meeting. There was no real plan on how to proceed. On the one hand, you had Iran. Iran backs Hamas. It considers Israel its mortal enemy. Tehran also has close ties with other groups, like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. It trains and arms all these groups. So obviously, Iran's suggestion was the most confrontational.
Cutting any sort of political or economic relations with the Zionist regime by the Islamic countries. In this regard, trade boycott against the Zionist regime, especially in the energy field, should be prioritized.
Raisi wants Muslim nations to cut ties with Israel to stop selling oil to Israel. And this has been done before. In 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Arab nations led by the late King Faisal of Saudi Arabia stopped oil shipments to Israel's allies. This caused the world's first oil shock. The price of oil rose by 300% over the next year. So an oil embargo is a potent weapon that the Islamic nations possess. But Saudi Arabia does not want to use it. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman does not want to go down that road. Reports say countries that have normalized ties with Israel, like Bahrain and the UAE, are not keen on severing them. They don't want to cut ties. Plus, most Islamic nations do not want to arm groups like Hamas. So most of Raisi's suggestions were shot down. In the end, the OIC nations could only agree on a ceasefire and relief for the Palestinians, not anything punitive. Although that does not take away from the show of solidarity, Raisi became the first Iranian president in 11 years to visit Saudi Arabia. It was a milestone, also a message. Whatever internal divisions in the greater Islamic world, the Israel-Hamas war is bridging those divides. If there isn't some respite for the people of Gaza, it could lead to a rift between the Islamic nations and the West.